Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Digits presentation today. So thank you for joining us to learn about Train for Work, perspectives on UK L&D. So we're going to be sharing some really useful insights today from a report that we did recently around the sort of skills and L&D environment across the UK, getting some employee and practitioner views on it. So just by way of introduction, my name's Andrea Matkin. I am the LMS sales manager here at Digits. We've got a stand just over here. I'm joined by my colleague Burgoyne, who is our head of talent for Digits and the CIPHR Group. So Bradley will be going through quite a lot of the stats with you today. So if you haven't heard about us already, Digits has been around for about 30 odd years. So whilst we look small, we're not. We've been around for a while. We've got some great household brands that we've worked with. Everyone from Mitsubishi, Coca-Cola, Royal Bank of Scotland, and more recently like the Carpetrights, Henry Ford Academy. So we've got a really great portfolio of clients we've worked with. We're award-winning LMS, and we became part of the CIPHR Group in September 2020. So part of a wider sort of HRIS end-to-end people management solution, and now we are the LMS provider as part of that package. So, a few notes on the report. First of all, it was 60 UK-based in-house HR and L&D practitioners contributed to this survey back in November of last year, and it was a representative sample of 1,001 British adults. So you've got the report on your chair here, so feel free to have a bit of a read through. You can download it from our website if you want to be paper-free as well. But what we're going to go through today is just kind of some highlights of the report, just to kind of share some of the really interesting findings we had around that. And without further ado, I am going to hand over to Bradley to kick that off.
Thanks, Andrea. So to start with, we're going to look at what were the challenges that were highlighted in terms of UK L&D as a result of this report. And I guess having sat here today and talked to lots of people, it's probably no surprise that the number one challenge that came out was talent. You know, how do we find it? It's getting really challenging to find talent. And because of that, what are we doing to upskill and keep the talent that we do have within our organization? And these were some of the stats that kind of pulled out here in terms of organizations, as I said, really struggling to find talent. And equally, the sheer volume of people that post-pandemic, are really looking to make that shift in their career, whether that's taking it up to the next level in the job that I have now, or maybe thinking about career change and really kind of taking that opportunity to reflect and start somewhere new. And that was really borne out in the statistics that we see up here on the screen, really powerful. And as I said, having conversations today, I'm hearing that coming back from people in the hall. So what are employees, what are colleagues doing about that? They're very much taking matters into their own hands. You know, our report showed that many employees are seeking those opportunities to develop themselves. So rather than it always being forced by the organization, more and more people are starting to look for those opportunities to develop and being far more proactive around it, and therefore wanting that as a real baseline of any career in any organization that they work for. And again, really borne out in terms of the sheer volume of people that are either looking to retrain or upskill here in the UK as we sit right now. So if there's lots of people looking to upskill, what are they being offered? What are employees being offered out there in the marketplace? So I guess this first one shows, maybe no surprise, that organizations, there's still this big shift, still, you know, very important that we do the compliance and mandatory learning. And actually that making up the bulk of kind of what we do with colleagues on an annual basis. Very few who kind of don't require any mandatory training at all, but there are still some out there. But I guess it's not the mandatory element that people are looking for in terms of career development. They're probably looking for more of the non-mandatory, voluntary learning opportunities. And with that, the data told us something slightly different. So there were lots of organizations, you know, 2/3 that said, yeah, we give colleagues that opportunity, either 6 monthly or yearly, to do some non-mandatory stuff. But look at this kind of gulf in the middle between we do stuff annually to we don't do anything at all. And I guess the concern there from a survey perspective is if you sat in that camp over there of 1/3 of we don't offer any opportunity, my challenge would be that if there's people telling us that they're seeking out those opportunities, if they're not going to get them with you, where are they going to get them from? And that mindset of, I may well just look somewhere else. Somewhere else might be giving me that opportunity to do that learning, and that weighing on people's minds of whether do I stay where I am or do I go? Do I go and find something new? And I think companies in this area are going to reap the rewards of that versus companies that maybe are sitting at the other end of that spectrum. So what types of training are available to employees if I am getting it? Again, still this kind of lots of, as we would expect, health and safety, compliance-based learning. Colleagues kind of can fill their boots on that stuff. But maybe as we go down here and we start looking at mentoring, soft skills, continuous professional development, it starts to get a little bit lighter. There's not as much being offered here. And I would argue that actually this end of the spectrum is far more where I'm going to kind of develop my career than maybe with the health and safety. As important as it is, it's important that we put just as much effort behind the others. Now, what was interesting with this survey is not only did we survey learners, we surveyed practitioners as well. And we kind of said, well, what do you think is being offered? And practitioners as a whole were more willing to say that they felt that we were catering for some of the non-mandatory versus the employees saying that we weren't. So we maybe felt that there was a possible disconnect here between practitioners and learners in terms of what do I expect versus what am I offering. And what we've been encouraging people to do is kind of grab that copy of that report and really study it in more detail and let that be a conversation starter between you as a practitioner and your learners in terms of why are they feeling that way and why does that disconnect exist. So what do employees think of L&D opportunities? So some good news here. On the whole, nearly 2/3 of employees said, actually, I think I've got some really good opportunities. I've got some good career development opportunities, some good L&D opportunities. But there was still a huge portion that kind of said, no, it's all right, it's okay, it's a bit average. And I don't think anyone kind of in this hall today sets out to deliver a very average performance when it comes to what people think about L&D. So who's in the driving seat with this? So most employees were saying that actually the bulk of learning I'm doing is still being driven by my employer. It's stuff I'm being told I have to do. And I guess we all have been a part of that. I know personally I've been a part of that. The whole, you've got to go and do this. My manager said I have to go and do that. And then we stray into that possible kind of box ticking exercise. Not many saying that the training came about as a result of them requesting it. But that's kind of at odds with people saying that they want to take more ownership of their development. So maybe that opportunity to take ownership just isn't there within my organisation. It's far more I'm dictated to rather than empowered to go and seek out and find that opportunity. And who is receiving the biggest bulk of that? Who's instigating those training requests? Again, biggest bulk kind of sits in that employee category, not so much line manager, which we're going to kind of get onto later. There's an interesting story within this report, I think, around line managers in particular in some of the later slides. Next one, I think, is a bit concerning for us in terms of, a quarter of employees saying that actually they feel training's a bit of a box-ticking exercise. It's kind of like, I'm being told I have to do it, I turn up, I do it, I don't really understand why. Probably because they get audited every year and I just have to show that I've done this training. And from an engagement perspective, I guess that's really, really challenging because we're not engaged, we're just doing it because we have to do it. But when you ask practitioners don't see it as a box-ticking exercise. Only 3% saw it as a box-ticking exercise with practitioners, which again is another area where we found this disparity between the two audiences. So maybe as practitioners, we feel we're being super clear around why people need to do it, but that's not translating through to the people that we're delivering the content to. So there's a real opportunity there for us to think about how we're communicating and are we giving them that bigger why as to the reason why they need to do it. I think some of that could also be fed by if the opportunity hasn't been explored by me, if I've not been the one to instigate it, I'm probably more likely to see that it's box ticky if it's been mandated by the organisation rather than me instigate that opportunity. Interestingly, although lots of organisations are offering L&D opportunities to all of their staff, there's still a big portion that are either offering it to some or maybe none at all. So again, gives us food for thought in terms of, is that real, or are they just not hearing about it? Do they just not know how to access that opportunity? And again, we get back to communication being a really important factor. However, most employees say that they are trained sufficiently for the job that they have. I guess the challenge for us as practitioners is, it's great that you're trained for the job that you're doing today, but are you trained for the next job? Are you trained for the thing after that? Because if skill shortage and talent is becoming harder to acquire, I kind of need to make sure that my people are ready for tomorrow, not just ready for today. So maybe that's some food for thought for all of us. I said I'd talk about managers, and when I read this report, I think this was the biggest thing that stuck out to me. I think it's quite concerning that over 50% of managers fit in this camp of either I've never received any learning and development for my role, or I did, but it only happened when I first got the gig. And then after that, I kind of fell off a cliff, and I was just expecting, well, you've been trained now, you know what you're doing, go off and do it. And I think that's quite worrying, because I look at this and say, actually, if our managers aren't feeling the benefit of that learning and development, how on earth are we ever going to build a learning culture within our organisation? Because if I'm not receiving it, I'm less likely to see the value in my team receiving those development opportunities and less likely to help them out. So I think that's a big kind of red flag for us as practitioners, is what are we doing with this audience and how regularly are we doing it to make sure they're reaping the benefits of continuous development. And I guess that filters in, that kind of direct consequence of that is lots and lots of employees were saying that they're just not given the time to explore those L&D opportunities. And again, I think that goes back to the manager piece. If I'm a manager, I'm not getting anything, why should I make time for other people to get something? I just don't see the value in it because I'm not experiencing it myself. So a big thing there that I think more engagement with managers would absolutely help. So let's have a look at this kind of like how do people want to learn? We've all been challenged as practitioners with 2 years of kind of lockdown and COVID, where we've shifted massively. I think all of us have shifted massively how we deliver training. And there's a far more blended approach now, which is what we see. We see that borne out. There's a wider spectrum of how people have offered. I think if we had run this a couple of years ago, this section in terms of in-person would have probably been through the roof and everything else would have just been down the bottom here. So a huge shift. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's how colleagues want to receive that learning. And maybe the story it tells us here is that lots of colleagues now are receiving e-learning. 50% of their L&D is delivered via e-learning. But actually only 32% of them say that they would like it in that way. So maybe we've now shifted too far the other way and we just need to kind of, not massively, but just readdress that balance a little bit. I think what was quite nice to see is there is still that craving for face-to-face L&D. And I guess that human connection that comes along with that maybe you just can't replicate in another environment. And again, broadly the same with practitioners in terms of the two were fairly evenly matched in terms of what was being delivered and how they would like to see it delivered. Maybe there was this thing to say maybe there's a bit more of an over-reliance now in terms of virtual training and maybe wanting to see more virtual reality training as we move forward. So I guess there's lots of statistics that we've spoke about there, and I was conscious I didn't just want to throw a load of percentages at you because the book is full of percentages. I wanted to try and sort of tell a little bit about the story behind those figures. But based on that, how can we respond? What tools have we got? What have we got available to respond to what we're telling? And I'm going to hand back to my colleague Andrea, who's going to explore that in a little bit more detail and share some insights with you. So over to you, Andrea.
Thanks, Bradley. So lots of food for thought there with all those statistics, and the obvious next step is what are we going to do about that? So throughout this, we're all facing the same challenge of, are we attracting, are we retaining, are we developing our staff? So we saw the challenges earlier of that talent retention. I've had a lot of conversations over the last day and a half with colleagues coming up to the stand. They're all facing that same skills gap. They're facing the problems of hiring the right people. It is a candidate's market out there, and it might stay that way for a little while. So whilst we do have our perfect ideal of a candidate that we want to hire into the business, sometimes it's just not possible. So we've all heard that sort of hire for attitude, not for skill. So if you're looking for those right sort of attitudes, think about the kinds of people that are out there in the market. Could you be looking at new starters who are coming in new to the world of work that are ready to be sort of developed, or are there people from other industries who are looking to kind of do a right shift? They're experienced but perhaps not in your sector. So think about how your L&D programs can be supporting that. Do you have new starter programs, for example? Could you have apprenticeships? Could you have cross-skilling and upskilling programs? So when someone starts in their induction, you're ready to kind of help them take that next step and really leverage those transferable skills that they're bringing to the business. Make learning part of that induction process as well. So, how many of us started a new job and we spend our first week, trawling through policies, going through, compliance training? Give your new starters access to that learning platform before they even start, as their kind of pre-boarding process. That gives them a real opportunity to have a great first impression and see how committed your organization is to that learning and development aspect. But also they give the opportunity to kind of do some of that learning and development before they start. So on day one, they can hit the ground running. They can really get into the nuts and bolts of the role that they're taking on, and maybe even start to kind of harness that enthusiasm of a new job to really start learning more through your L&D programs. Of course, succession planning, we've all talked about it. Some of us know how to do it. Some of us struggle to sort of know where to start. Again, with that sort of talent attraction issues that we're facing, there's oodles of expertise across the business, and often just trying to identify those skills gaps. Where have we got some really great skills in our organization that we could redeploy, allow people not only the upward step, but even a sideward step into the business. So using sort of, skills gap analysis, looking at, where the sort of development programs are, leveraging sort of mentoring on the job kind of sort of training opportunities, you can be looking at that succession planning mapping and really build that expertise, and therefore start to retain those star talent in your organization. And finally, Bradley was obviously talking about that sort of management training, getting that management buy-in. So making sure that all your leadership teams are continually developed, that we're not forgetting about those. So many times we have managers, people step up into those management roles. They don't have the tools or the skills to really lead effectively. And that then brings a whole raft of other challenges down the track. So by making sure that their development is prioritized as much as non-management staff, it ensures that not only are they well equipped to lead their teams and support them, but also they really understand that value of the L&D programs that they're sort of pushing out and giving their staff time to be able to kind of go in, learn what they need to learn, support them in taking that next step in their career. So all this stuff can start to, help generate that sort of sense of learning culture. And ultimately what we want to do is make sure people feel like they matter, that we are committed to developing them in their roles. And even, look, naturally people will leave the company. It might happen that, there isn't that next step for them and it is time for them to move on. But if they do, we want them to move on with that really positive impression of the organization, because they will then become your advocates out there, telling their network how great it was to work for your organization, and they thereby can then start bringing that talent, back the other way. They might even return a couple of years later with a whole raft of new skills and fresh perspectives that they've gained from other roles. So it's a really sort of virtuous cycle you can get yourself into. However, obviously the whole idea of fostering a culture of learning, it's all good and well saying that, but what kind of things will really enable you to do that? Think about embedding that learning into everyday activities. It's not just about doing your annual compliance training, sitting there doing your e-learning. It is about looking at the opportunities to learn at every step of the way. So that could be doing some on-the-job observations, giving constant feedback. It could be having social learning opportunities where peers can exchange expertise across departments. It could be sort of setting up mentoring programs. And again, it's really just having that opportunity to have bite-sized learning alongside that more formal learning. making that learning meaningful and relevant is also massively key. So does everyone have to do the annual compliance training? Could you be putting pre-course assessments, checking that knowledge, making someone exempt if they've already demonstrated the knowledge that they need, making sure that they're only doing the learning they need to so they can focus their efforts on the right areas that are going to help their development the most. We all like something shiny. We love a badge, we love a reward, we love a prize. So think about how you can reward the learning, celebrate those achievements, think of the kind of tools, the kind of initiatives that you can put in place, again, to create that motivation. We've seen in some of our, like some of our retail clients, they've got, especially with sales, people are really competitive, they like leaderboards and they get that sort of motivation from trying to better their colleagues and do more and more learning. And finally, look, we've seen the last 2 years has been massively disruptive. Our whole work lives have changed. We've had to face new challenges of how we work. Are we hybrid? Are we remote? What does that mean? So we've had to think about things like, do people need to be trained in digital skills more? Is there mental health and well-being things that we need to be thinking about? So this was going to constantly evolve. This isn't going to be the first change. It's not going to be the last change. And equally, your L&D offer really needs to evolve with that to make sure, A, it doesn't become stale, but also it remains relevant for your employees. So you've got all your plans, you've got all your strategies in place, you're fostering a culture of learning, but how are you going to deliver that? It's thinking about the tools in your toolkit to be able to do that. Now, of course, we would love you to use something like Digits LMS, and we would love to support you in that, but there's a lot of providers here today that you're going to be talking to and finding out about how those tools and those SaaS solutions can really help you evolve and expand your L&D offer. So I like to sort of think about these sort of 4 areas of kind of engagement, empowerment, tracking and reward. So first of all, obviously, if we're not engaged, we're not going to absorb the knowledge. So what kind of things can help you to build that engagement? Making sure that learning is personalized, that you've got a blended approach, making sure that it's all very visual, it's not just a bland list of training. There is a way of kind of making it more exciting, making it more accessible and understandable, and appealing to those different learning types as well. So everyone learns differently. Make sure you capture that. Obviously, accessing anywhere, anytime is key. We're all on the move. We're all on our mobile phones. We're on our tablets. So making sure that anything that you are pushing out there is accessible via various devices, particularly when you've got employees who perhaps aren't sitting there at a desk all day on a PC. And obviously automated workflows. You want to save time. You also want to be able to kind of continually engage with your employees even if you don't have the time to do so. So let systems do that work for you to make sure that they stay engaged. That empowerment piece is so key though. So you want your learners to really, it's not just about pushing that learning out all the time, but really ensuring that they're kind of got access to find the ways to access learning. So they need some skills training in certain areas. They need to be able to kind of tap into content libraries, find the learning that's going to be relevant for them, as well as anything that's being kind of set as mandatory learning. But equally, a lot of people I've been speaking to over the last day and a half, that whole talent management, the skills gap analysis, they're really, some people are really sort of struggling on how to do that. What kind of tools can help you identify where those development needs are, but also who your rising stars are? Where are the really strong skills that we haven't really tapped into that we are perhaps underutilizing as a business? So thinking about those skills analysis tools, and then equally allowing your learners to kind of self-serve their learning. So can they reach out to experts across their business easily and find them? Can they sort of book themselves onto workshop-based training at a time that suits them? So all those kind of tools you want to take into consideration. Obviously tracking, if we don't track the progress, then it kind of, we're only doing half the job really. So not only for the learners themselves to be able to kind of keep track of their progress, so easily visualization of that learning, and for their managers as well, but also a way of you being able to report as an organization, because we all know ROI is always a big thing that we're getting pushed on. Our boards, our management teams want to ensure that anything we're investing in is actually delivering the results that we need to. So being able to effectively report not just on the learning that's taking place, but even think about comparing with your business metrics. Are your customer satisfaction scores going up? Are your sales going up at the same time you're delivering that training? Compare those results and make sure that your learning is as impactful and as relevant as it needs to be using the tools that you have at your fingertips. And finally, we did talk about rewards. So, back to the shiny little badges and the celebration of the achievements. But I can't underestimate how important this is. People want to understand that, there is a bit of excitement around that. They want to be sort of valued for what they do. So it's not only about what that, the sort of why of what you're doing, the training, is that delivering something more in my day-to-day role because I've had that extra training, but also just creating a bit of excitement. I've achieved a badge, I've achieved a qualification, I feel really proud of what I've done, and equally I'm going to take that engagement and excitement into my everyday role. So all this stuff is there. Like I said, there's a lot of tools around there. If you'd love to come and see what we do with Digits LMS, how we can support that, our stand is just across the way here at K40, so please do come and visit us. But we hope that was helpful for you, gave some sort of food for thought, some insights into what the sort of world of work and the challenges we might be facing now, and we'd welcome any questions from the audience, so thank you.
You can put your hand up if you have a question. We can run round with the mic, if that helps.
Or you can write it down on a bit of paper if you don't want to talk.
If there are no questions, thank you for the round of applause. Unfortunately, this side of the theatre is blocked from people leaving, but this side where our stand is absolutely open, and we have a team there that are happy to assist you with exiting the theatre. So if you'd like to exit in that direction, that'd be amazing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.